The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Kensington Palace as Prince William adjusted his navy blue suit jacket one final time. Today was different from his usual royal engagements. Standing beside him, 9-year-old Prince George tugged at his crisp white shirt collar, while 7-year-old Princess Charlotte smoothed down her powder blue dress with careful hands. "Remember what we talked about," William said gently, kneeling down to meet his children at eye level. "Today we're visiting some very special children who have been quite brave while staying in hospital." George nodded seriously, his blonde hair catching the light. "And we're bringing them books and games, right, Papa?" "That's right." William smiled, reaching out to straighten George's small tie. "But most importantly, we're bringing them our time and attention. Sometimes that's the best gift we can give someone." Charlotte stepped closer, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Will there be babies there too, Papa?" "I like babies." "There might be," William replied, standing and taking both children's hands. "The children's ward has patients of all ages, from tiny babies to teenagers. Each one of them is fighting their own battle, and our job is to remind them that people care about them." The black Range Rover waited in the palace courtyard, its windows tinted for privacy. William had specifically requested a smaller security detail for today's visit. He wanted this to feel as natural and warm as possible, understanding that too much formality might make the sick children feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed. As they settled into the vehicle, Charlotte pressed her face against the window, watching London pass by in a blur of red buses and black taxis. George sat quietly beside his father, occasionally glancing at the carefully wrapped packages that filled the seat beside him. "Papa," George said thoughtfully, "when you were little, did Grandpa Charles take you to visit hospitals too?" William considered the question carefully. His own childhood had been marked by royal duties and public appearances, but also by his mother's passionate commitment to charitable work. Princess Diana had been known for her genuine warmth with children and her ability to connect with people from all walks of life. "Yes, he did sometimes," William replied. "But your grandmama Diana was the one who really taught me about the importance of these visits. She believed that everyone deserves to feel seen and valued, no matter what they're going through." The children had heard stories about their grandmother, though they were too young to have met her. William made sure to keep her memory alive through tales of her kindness and her dedication to helping others. Charlotte turned from the window. Was she good at talking to sick children? "She was wonderful at it," William said, his voice warm with memory. "She had this special way of making everyone feel like the most important person in the room. She would sit on their beds, play their games, and really listen to what they had to say." The hospital came into view as their car rounded a corner. St. Mary's Children's Hospital was a modern building with colorful murals painted on its exterior walls. Cartoon animals and rainbow patterns decorated the entrance, designed to make the place feel less intimidating for young patients. A small group of hospital staff waited by the entrance, but William had requested that there be no media presence. This wasn't about publicity or photo opportunities. This was about genuine human connection and bringing joy to children who needed it most. Dr. Sarah Chun, the head of pediatrics, stepped forward as the royal family emerged from their vehicle. She was a petite woman in her 40s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Your Royal Highness, Prince George, Princess Charlotte," she greeted them warmly. "Thank you so much for coming today. The children have been looking forward to this visit all week." William shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for having us, Dr. Chun. We're honored to be here." George and Charlotte stayed close to their father, taking in the new environment with wide eyes. The hospital lobby was bright and cheerful, with a large aquarium filled with tropical fish and comfortable seating areas decorated with stuffed animals and children's artwork. "Would you like to meet some of our patients?" Dr. Chen asked, leading them toward the elevators. "We have about 15 children today who are well enough for visitors. They range in age from 6 months to 16 years old." As they rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, William briefed his children once more. "Remember to let them talk about whatever they want to talk about. Don't ask about their illnesses unless they bring it up first. Some children want to talk about their treatment. Others prefer to discuss their hobbies or their pets. The elevator doors opened to reveal a corridor lined with cheerful artwork and motivational posters. Nurses moved quietly between rooms, their shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. Despite the hospital setting, there was an atmosphere of hope and determination that impressed William immediately. Their first stop was the infant ward, where tiny patients slept in specialized cribs surrounded by monitoring equipment. Charlotte's eyes grew wide as she saw babies smaller than any she had ever encountered. "These are our youngest patients," Dr. Chun explained in hushed tones. "Some were born prematurely. Others are here for various medical treatments. The nurses work around the clock to give them the best possible care." A young nurse named Emma approached them, her scrubs decorated with tiny elephant prints. "Would you like to meet baby Oliver?" she asked. "He's 3 months old and loves having visitors." They gathered around a small crib where a tiny baby lay sleeping, his chest rising and falling steadily. His parents, a young couple who looked exhausted but hopeful, sat beside him holding hands. "This is James and Michelle," Emma introduced them. "They've been here with Oliver for 6 weeks now." William extended his hand to the couple. "How are you both holding up?" he asked with genuine concern. James cleared his throat, clearly moved by the royal presence. "It's been difficult, sir, but Oliver is a fighter. The doctors say he's making good progress." Charlotte stepped closer to the crib, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's so tiny. Is he going to be okay?" Michelle smiled through tired eyes. "We believe he will be. He's already much stronger than when he arrived." George reached into one of the gift bags they had brought. "We have books," he announced quietly, "for when he gets bigger." The simple gesture touched James and Michelle deeply. It was clear that the royal children genuinely cared about the patients they were meeting, and their innocence brought comfort to worried parents. They spent several more minutes in the infant ward, meeting other tiny patients and their families. William was struck by the resilience of the parents, many of whom had been living at the hospital for weeks or even months while their children received treatment. Moving to the older children's ward, they encountered a different energy altogether. Here, patients ranging from toddlers to teenagers were engaged in various activities despite their medical conditions. Some were playing board games, others were reading or watching television. Their first stop was to meet Lucy, a 6-year-old girl with bright red hair who was recovering from surgery. She sat up in her hospital bed, wearing pink pajamas decorated with unicorns, and greeted them with an enormous smile. "Are you really a prince and princess?" she asked George and Charlotte directly. George nodded seriously. "Yes, but we're also just kids who like to play games and read books just like you." Lucy's eyes lit up. "I love books. I've read all the ones in the playroom already." Charlotte reached into their gift bag and pulled out a collection of adventure stories. "These are brand new," she said proudly. "My papa read them to me, and they have pirates and treasure maps." "Pirates!" Lucy exclaimed. "I want to be a pirate when I grow up, or maybe a doctor who helps other kids." William sat down in the chair beside her bed. "Those are both wonderful dreams, Lucy. What kind of doctor would you want to be?" "One that makes kids feel better when they're scared," she replied thoughtfully. "Sometimes the machines here are very loud, and they make me feel worried. But the doctors always explain what they're doing, and that helps." The conversation continued naturally, with Lucy telling them about her favorite nurses and her pet hamster at home. She showed them drawings she had made during her stay, including one of a castle that looked remarkably similar to the palaces the royal children knew well. In the next room, they met Marcus, a 12-year-old boy who was passionate about football despite being temporarily confined to a wheelchair. His room was decorated with posters of various football teams, and he wore a jersey from his local club. "Do you play football, Your Highness?" Marcus asked William eagerly. "I do enjoy a good game," William replied. "What position do you play?" "Midfielder," Marcus answered proudly. "I'm the captain of my school team. Well, I was before." He gestured toward his wheelchair. "You still are," William said firmly. "Being here doesn't change who you are or what you're good at." I bet your teammates are excited for you to get back out there. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. They send me messages every day. My coach says they're saving my position for me. George, who had been listening intently, spoke up. I'm learning to play football too. Maybe when you're better, you could give me some tips? The suggestion clearly delighted Marcus. Really? That would be amazing. They spent considerable time discussing football strategies, favorite players, and upcoming matches. William was impressed by Marcus's knowledge of the game and his determination to return to playing despite his current challenges. As they moved through the ward, each encounter revealed something new about the courage and spirit of these young patients. There was Sophia, an 8-year-old artist who had transformed her hospital room into a gallery of colorful paintings. There was Ahmed, a 15-year-old aspiring chef who described elaborate recipes he planned to cook when he returned home. Each child had their own story, their own dreams, and their own way of coping with their medical journey. What struck William most was how rarely the children focused on their illnesses. Instead, they talked about their interests, their families, their pets, and their plans for the future. The afternoon was progressing beautifully, with natural conversations flowing between the royal visitors and the young patients. William noticed how George and Charlotte were adapting to each encounter, showing genuine interest in what each child had to say. In the playroom, they found a group of children engaged in a competitive game of chess. The players ranged in age from 9 to 14, and despite their various medical conditions, they were focused intently on their strategies. Who's winning? Charlotte asked, approaching the table where 2 boys were deep in concentration. David is, replied one of the players, a girl named Rachel who was watching the game. He almost always wins. He's really smart. David, a quiet boy of about 10, looked up from the chessboard with a shy smile. I like the way chess makes you think ahead, he explained. You have to plan several moves before you make them. George, who had been learning chess at school, was fascinated. Could you teach me some tricks? Sure. David's face brightened considerably. Chess is even better when you have someone good to play against. They spent the next hour in the playroom, with David teaching George chess strategies, while Charlotte joined a group of girls who were creating friendship bracelets. William moved between the various activities, sometimes joining in conversations, other times simply observing the natural interactions between his children and the young patients. What impressed him most was how quickly barriers dissolved. Within minutes, George and Charlotte were no longer seen as royal visitors, but simply as new friends who happened to be visiting. The children shared toys, told jokes, and included the royal siblings in their games without any sense of formality or special treatment. A young nurse named Tom approached William during a quiet moment. Your children are wonderful with our patients, he observed. They have a natural ability to connect with kids who are going through difficult times. William watched as Charlotte helped a younger patient build a tower with colorful blocks, while George continued his chess lesson with David. They're learning as much as they're giving, he replied thoughtfully. This experience is teaching them about resilience, courage, and the importance of human connection. Dr. Chin rejoined them as the afternoon visit began winding down. Would you like to visit our teenage ward before you go? She asked. We have several older patients who would love to meet you, though they might be a bit more reserved than our younger ones. William nodded. He understood that teenagers might have different reactions to a royal visit, and he wanted to respect their comfort levels while still offering his support. The teenage ward had a different atmosphere altogether. The patients here were more aware of their circumstances and often more private about their experiences. The rooms were decorated more like dormitories than typical hospital spaces, with personal belongings, photographs, and electronics that reflected their individual personalities. Their first introduction was to Chloe, a 16-year-old who was an aspiring photographer. Her hospital room was filled with cameras, photo albums, and striking black and white images she had captured during her treatment. These are incredible, William said genuinely, examining her portfolio. You have a real talent for capturing emotion in your subjects. Chloe smiled, clearly pleased by the praise. Photography helps me process everything that's happening, she explained. When I'm behind the camera, I feel like myself again, not just a patient. Charlotte was fascinated by the cameras and asked dozens of questions about how they worked. Chloe patiently explained the basics of photography, even letting Charlotte look through the viewfinder of her favorite camera. Maybe you could take some pictures of our visit? George suggested. To remember today. Chloe's eyes lit up at the suggestion, and she began capturing candid moments of the royal family interacting with other patients. Her photos would later become treasured memories for the hospital staff and the families they served. In another room, they met Jake, a 14-year-old musician who had been writing songs during his hospital stay. He played guitar and had filled a notebook with lyrics that reflected his experiences and hopes for the future. "Would you play something for us?" William asked, settling into a chair beside Jake's bed. Jake strummed a few chords and began singing a song he had written about friendship and support during difficult times. His voice was clear and strong, and the lyrics were surprisingly mature for someone's age. George and Charlotte listened intently, clearly moved by the performance. When Jake finished, Charlotte applauded enthusiastically. "That was beautiful," she said. "Did you really write all those words yourself?" Jake nodded proudly. "Music helps me say things I can't always say in regular talking." As their visit drew to a close, William gathered his children for a final walk through the wards. They had distributed all their gifts, shared countless conversations, and created memories that would last far beyond this single afternoon. The impact of their visit was evident in the faces of both patients and staff. Children who had seemed withdrawn earlier were now animated and smiling. Parents who had looked exhausted when they arrived now appeared more hopeful and connected to the broader community. Dr. Chen walked with them toward the elevator, clearly moved by what she had witnessed. "Thank you," she said simply. "This kind of visit reminds everyone here that they're not forgotten, that people beyond these walls care about their well-being." William shook hands with the medical staff who had facilitated their visit, thanking each one for their dedication and compassion. George and Charlotte said their goodbyes to several patients they had connected with, promising to send letters and drawings. As they prepared to leave, William reflected on the afternoon's experiences. This visit had accomplished exactly what he had hoped it would. It had brought joy and comfort to children facing medical challenges while teaching his own children valuable lessons about empathy, resilience, and service to others. The drive back to Kensington Palace was quieter than their morning journey, with both George and Charlotte processing what they had experienced. The visit had given them a new perspective on the privileges they enjoyed and the responsibility that came with their position. William knew that this was just the beginning of many such visits in their future, each one an opportunity to serve others while learning more about the world beyond palace walls. The following morning brought an unexpected phone call to Kensington Palace that would change the trajectory of what had been planned as a simple one-time hospital visit. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice carried excitement as she spoke with William's private secretary about developments that had occurred overnight. "Several of our patients haven't stopped talking about yesterday's visit," she explained. "More importantly, we've had some significant breakthroughs with children who had been struggling. Lucy, the 6-year-old who spoke with Princess Charlotte about books, asked for the first time since her surgery if she could walk to the playroom instead of using a wheelchair." The news prompted an immediate conversation between William and Catherine about the unexpected impact their children's visit had created. While Catherine had commitments that prevented her from joining the original visit, she was deeply moved by George and Charlotte's enthusiastic recounting of their experiences. "Papa, Marcus taught me about football positions, and I promised I would learn more so we could talk about strategy next time," George explained over breakfast, his eyes bright with purpose. "Is it going to be a next time?" Charlotte, spreading marmalade on her toast with careful concentration, added her own perspective. The teenage girl with the cameras, Chloe, said she wanted to show me more pictures. "She takes pictures of feelings. Papa, I didn't know you could do that." William exchanged glances with Catherine, recognizing that what had begun as a single charitable visit had evolved into something more meaningful for their children. The experience had clearly sparked genuine connections rather than simple charitable obligations. Dr. Chun has invited us back, Williams said carefully. But this time, she'd like us to participate in some of their ongoing programs rather than just visiting patients in their rooms. Catherine leaned forward with interest. What kind of programs? They have a weekly storytelling session in the playroom, and they're launching a new initiative called Dreams and Goals where patients work on projects related to their interests and future plans. They think George and Charlotte could contribute in meaningful ways. The idea of returning to the hospital filled both children with excitement, though their enthusiasm manifested differently. George immediately began planning what he might teach other children about chess and football, while Charlotte started gathering art supplies she thought the patients might enjoy. 3 days later, the royal family found themselves once again traveling through London toward St. Mary's Children's Hospital. This time, Catherine joined them, carrying bags filled with art materials, books, and games that she and the children had carefully selected together. "Remember," Catherine said as they approached the hospital, "we're not here as visitors today. We're here as participants. That means we follow the same rules as everyone else and contribute to the activities just like any other volunteers." The distinction was important to William. He wanted his children to understand that meaningful service required genuine participation rather than ceremonial appearances. Today would test their ability to integrate into existing programs and work alongside dedicated hospital volunteers. Dr. Chen met them at the entrance with several members of her team, including child psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster and volunteer coordinator Mrs. Patricia Williams. The expanded, welcoming committee reflected the hospital's recognition that today's visit represented a potential partnership rather than a simple charitable appearance. "We're so grateful you've chosen to return," Dr. Chun said as they walked toward the elevators. "The children have been asking about you constantly, and several parents have mentioned that their children have shown improved engagement with their treatment plans since your visit." Mrs. Williams, a grandmother figure with silver hair and gentle eyes, explained the day's schedule as they rode to the 3rd floor. "We'll start with the storytelling session in the main playroom. Several of our regular young volunteers will be there, along with about 12 patients ranging from 5 to 15 years old." The playroom had been rearranged since their previous visit. Colorful cushions and bean bags formed a large circle in the center of the room, with bookshelves and art supplies arranged around the perimeter. Large windows provided natural light, and the walls displayed artwork created by current and former patients. 8 children were already seated in the circle when the royal family arrived, along with 3 teenage volunteers who helped run the weekly program. The atmosphere was comfortable and informal, with children chatting quietly and volunteers organizing books and materials. Lucy, the red-haired 6-year-old they had met during their first visit, stood up immediately when she saw Charlotte. "You came back. I finished the pirate book you gave me." "Really?" Charlotte's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Which part was your favorite?" As the 2 girls began discussing pirates and treasure maps, William noticed how naturally the conversation flowed. There was no sense of formality or special treatment, just 2 children sharing their enthusiasm for the same story. George gravitated toward David, the chess-playing boy who had taught him strategies during their previous visit. "I've been practicing the move you showed me," George announced. "My chess teacher at school was impressed." "That's great," David replied enthusiastically. "Maybe after story time we could play a game? I've been working on some new strategies too." Mrs. Williams called the group to attention by ringing a small bell decorated with ribbons. "Welcome to today's storytelling session," she announced. "We have some special participants today, but remember, everyone gets a turn to share or read if they want to." The session began with one of the teenage volunteers, a girl named Emma who was visiting her younger brother, reading from a book about friendship and adventure. Her voice was clear and expressive, and she encouraged the younger children to predict what might happen next in the story. William was impressed by how naturally the program flowed. Rather than having adults direct every activity, the children and teenage volunteers took turns leading discussions and sharing their thoughts about the stories being read. When Charlotte's turn came to share, she had chosen a book about a young girl who dreams of becoming an artist. As she read, she showed the illustrations to the group and asked questions that encouraged other children to talk about their own artistic interests. "Does anyone here like to draw or paint?" she asked, looking around the circle. Several hands shot up immediately. Sophia, the 8-year-old artist they had met previously, was eager to share. "I paint pictures of places I want to visit when I get out of the hospital," she said. "Yesterday, I painted a beach with dolphins." "I'd love to see that painting," Charlotte replied sincerely. "Maybe later you could show me how you painted the dolphins?" The request clearly delighted Sophia, and several other children began discussing their own artistic projects. William observed how Charlotte's genuine interest sparked engagement from children who had been quietly listening until that moment. George chose to read from a book about different sports around the world. His natural enthusiasm for athletics came through as he described cricket, rugby, and football to children who might not have been familiar with all these activities. Marcus, the 12-year-old footballer in the wheelchair, was particularly engaged during George's presentation. "I never knew cricket was so complicated," he admitted. "It sounds harder than football." "Different sports are challenging in different ways," George replied thoughtfully. "But they're all fun once you learn the rules. My papa says the most important thing is enjoying the game, whether you're winning or losing." The conversation naturally evolved into a discussion about different ways to stay active and competitive, even when dealing with physical limitations. Several of the older children shared adaptive sports they had discovered during their hospital stays, including wheelchair basketball and swimming therapy. Catherine participated by reading from a book about different cultures and traditions around the world. Her choice sparked curiosity about the royal family's travels and experiences with different countries and customs. "Have you really met people from all these different places?" asked Chloe, the teenage photographer. "We've been fortunate to travel quite a bit," Catherine replied. "But meeting people here in this hospital has taught us just as much about courage and different perspectives as traveling to other countries has." The honesty of her response resonated with both children and staff members. Rather than focusing on the glamorous aspects of royal travel, Catherine emphasized the value of learning from people in their own community. As the storytelling session concluded, the children naturally divided into smaller groups for different activities. Some headed toward art tables, others gravitated toward board games, and a few expressed interest in the chess sets that David had enthusiastically promoted. William joined a group working on the dreams and goals project that Dr. Chun had mentioned during their initial conversation. This program encouraged patients to create visual representations of their hopes and plans for after their hospital stays. The project materials included large poster boards, magazines for cutting out pictures, colored markers, and fabric scraps that could be glued and arranged creatively. Each child was encouraged to create a collage or drawing that represented their personal dreams and aspirations. Ahmed, the 15-year-old aspiring chef they had met previously, was working on an elaborate poster featuring pictures of different cuisines from around the world. He had drawn detailed sketches of cooking utensils and restaurant layouts alongside magazine cutouts of elaborate dishes. "This is incredible," Williams said, examining Ahmed's work. "You've really thought through every aspect of your culinary interests." "My parents own a small restaurant," Ahmed explained as he carefully glued a picture of a professional kitchen onto his poster. "When I get out of here, I want to help them expand their menu and maybe even open a second location." The conversation revealed that Ahmed had been using his time in the hospital to research different cooking techniques and restaurant management strategies. His illness had forced him to slow down physically, but it had given him time to develop detailed plans for his future. "Have you been able to do any cooking while you're here?" William asked. Ahmed's eyes lit up. "The hospital nutritionist lets me help plan special meals sometimes. Last week, I helped design a menu for patients who were celebrating birthdays. It felt amazing to create something that made people happy." William was struck by Ahmed's ability to find purpose and joy even within the constraints of his medical treatment. The teenager's determination to pursue his passion despite his current circumstances demonstrated a maturity and resilience that impressed everyone who met him. Meanwhile, Charlotte had joined Sophia and several other young artists at the art table. They were working collaboratively on a large mural that depicted different seasons throughout the year. Each child was responsible for contributing elements that represented their favorite time of year. "I love autumn," Sophia explained as she painted orange and red leaves. "The colors are so warm and happy." Charlotte chose to paint spring flowers, carefully adding details to tulips and daffodils. "Spring makes me think of new beginnings," she said, "like when baby animals are born and everything starts growing again." The collaborative nature of the mural project encouraged children to share stories about their favorite memories associated with different seasons. Some talked about family vacations, others described holidays and traditions that their families celebrated throughout the year. A young boy named Timothy, who had been quite shy during the storytelling session, began opening up as he painted snowflakes for the winter section of the mural. "I like winter because everything is quiet and peaceful," he said softly. "Sometimes when things are too noisy, winter makes me feel calm." His comment led to a thoughtful discussion about different ways that people recharge and find peace. Several children shared their own strategies for dealing with overwhelming situations, including listening to music, reading books, or spending time with animals. George had gravitated toward the chess area, where David was teaching several other children the basics of the game. The scene reminded William of his own childhood experiences learning strategic games from his father and grandfather. "Chess teaches you to think several moves ahead," David explained to a group of interested observers. "But it also teaches you that sometimes you have to change your plans when unexpected things happen." The metaphor wasn't lost on the children listening, many of whom had experienced unexpected changes in their own lives due to their medical conditions. The game provided a framework for discussing adaptability and strategic thinking that applied far beyond the chessboard. "Can you teach me too?" asked Rachel, the girl who had been watching chess games during their previous visit. "I'm good at thinking ahead, but I don't understand all the rules yet." David immediately invited her to sit beside him and began explaining how different pieces moved around the board. His patience and clear explanations revealed natural teaching abilities that impressed both George and the watching adults. As the afternoon progressed, William noticed how the various activities naturally flowed together. Children moved between art projects, games, and conversations based on their interests and energy levels. The hospital staff maintained a watchful but unobtrusive presence, ready to assist if needed, but allowing the children to direct their own engagement. Catherine had joined a group of teenage patients who were working on more complex dreams and goals projects. These older children were creating detailed plans that included specific steps they intended to take toward achieving their aspirations. Chloe was designing a portfolio layout for her photography work, including plans for submitting her images to student competitions and local art shows. Her hospital experience had actually strengthened her artistic vision, giving her access to emotional depths that enhanced her creative work. "Being sick has taught me about different kinds of strength," Chloe explained as she arranged photographs in her portfolio. "I want my pictures to show that beauty and hope can exist even in difficult situations." Her perspective impressed Catherine, who recognized the teenager's ability to transform challenging experiences into artistic insight. The conversation evolved into a discussion about different ways that artists process and express complex emotions through their creative work. Jake, the teenage musician, was working on plans for recording and sharing his original songs. He had written several pieces during his hospital stay and was now developing ideas for reaching audiences who might benefit from his music. "I want to perform at other hospitals," he explained, showing Catherine lyrics he had written about hope and resilience. "Music helped me get through this experience, and I think it could help other kids too." The maturity and generosity of spirit demonstrated by these teenage patients was remarkable. Rather than focusing solely on their own recovery and future plans, many were actively considering ways to help other children facing similar challenges. As their second hospital visit drew to a close, William gathered his family for a brief reflection on the day's experiences. They had successfully integrated into existing programs and contributed meaningfully to ongoing activities rather than simply making ceremonial appearances. "What did you learn today?" he asked George and Charlotte as they prepared to leave. "I learned that helping other people makes me feel good too," Charlotte replied thoughtfully. "When Sophia showed me her paintings, I felt happy because she was happy." George added his own observation. "David taught me that being patient with people who are learning new things is really important. When he taught Rachel to play chess, he never got frustrated even when she made mistakes." The insights demonstrated that both children were developing genuine understanding about service, empathy, and community engagement. They had moved beyond seeing hospital visits as charitable obligations and begun recognizing them as opportunities for mutual learning and connection. Dr. Chen approached them as they prepared to leave, clearly moved by what she had observed throughout the afternoon. "Your children have a gift for connecting with our patients," she said. "They bring normalcy and joy to children who sometimes feel isolated by their medical experiences." Catherine smiled, watching as George and Charlotte said their goodbyes to new friends. "They're learning as much as they're giving," she replied. "These experiences are teaching them about the strength and resilience that exists in every community." The drive back to Kensington Palace was filled with animated conversation as George and Charlotte processed their experiences and made plans for future visits. They had discovered that genuine service required ongoing commitment rather than occasional appearances, and they were eager to continue developing relationships with the children and staff at St. Mary's Hospital. 2 weeks had passed since the royal family's second visit to St. Mary's Children's Hospital when Dr. Chun called with unexpected news that would test their commitment to the relationships they had begun building with the young patients. "We've had some developments with several of the children you've been visiting," she explained to William during their morning conversation. "Some positive, some more challenging. Lucy, the 6-year-old who connected so well with Princess Charlotte, is scheduled for additional surgery next week. She's been asking specifically if Charlotte might visit her beforehand." The request highlighted an important aspect of working with seriously ill children that William wanted his own children to understand. Building genuine relationships meant being present during difficult times as well as celebratory moments. "And Ahmed, our aspiring chef, has been discharged," Dr. Chun continued. "He's doing well, but he's expressed interest in staying connected with the hospital's programs as a volunteer. He'd love to share his recovery story with current patients." William recognized the opportunity this presented. Ahmed's successful treatment and positive outlook could provide hope and inspiration for children just beginning their medical journeys. Including him in future visits would demonstrate the continuity of care and community that the hospitals strive to maintain. "There's one more thing," Dr. Chen added. "We've been approached by several other pediatric hospitals in London asking about establishing similar volunteer programs. Your family's involvement has generated significant positive attention for this kind of patient engagement." The news prompted serious discussions between William and Catherine about expanding their commitment, while ensuring that their involvement remained authentic rather than becoming a publicity campaign. They had always been clear that their primary goal was genuine service rather than public recognition. 3 days later, the royal family returned to the hospital with a different energy than their previous visits. Today would include both joyful reunions and more serious conversations about the realities of pediatric medical care. They arrived to find Ahmed waiting in the lobby, dressed in casual clothes and carrying a small bag filled with items he wanted to share with current patients. His transformation from patient to volunteer was immediately apparent in his confident posture and bright smile. "Your Royal Highness," Ahmed said, shaking William's hand firmly. "Thank you for including me in today's visit. I've been looking forward to this." Catherine was struck by the young man's poise and maturity. "How are you feeling about being back here in a different role?" she asked. "Excited," Ahmed replied honestly. "Being a patient here taught me so much about resilience and community. Now I want to share that experience with kids who might be feeling scared or overwhelmed." George and Charlotte greeted Ahmed with enthusiasm, clearly pleased to see him looking healthy and energetic. Their reunion demonstrated how genuine friendships had developed during his time as a patient. Their first stop was Lucy's room, where the 6-year-old was preparing for surgery scheduled for the following morning. She was noticeably more subdued than during their previous encounters, and her parents looked understandably anxious. Charlotte approached Lucy's bedside with gentle concern. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" she asked softly. "A little scared," Lucy admitted, clutching a stuffed unicorn that her parents had brought from home. "The doctors say it will help me get better, but I don't like going to sleep when the medicine makes me dizzy." The honest expression of fear opened up an important conversation about medical procedures and the emotions they can trigger in young patients. William was grateful that Charlotte had asked the question directly rather than avoiding the topic. "Being scared before surgery is completely normal," Catherine said, sitting on the edge of Lucy's bed. "Even adults feel nervous before medical procedures. The important thing is that you have people who care about you and doctors who are very good at their jobs." Lucy's mother, Sarah, had been quietly listening to the conversation. "Lucy has been talking about your visits constantly," she said to Charlotte. "Knowing that you were coming today has helped her feel braver about tomorrow." The comment reinforced for William the responsibility that came with building relationships with seriously ill children. Their visits provided emotional support that extended far beyond simple entertainment or distraction. Charlotte reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo album. "I made this for you," she said, showing Lucy pictures from their previous hospital visits. "So you can remember all the fun we had and know that we're thinking about you during your surgery." The photo album included images of their art projects, storytelling sessions, and candid moments of laughter and connection. Each picture was accompanied by Charlotte's careful handwriting describing what they had been doing and how much fun they had shared. "Look, there's the picture Chloe took of us painting the mural," Charlotte pointed out. "And here's one of you teaching me about unicorns." Lucy's demeanor brightened considerably as she looked through the album. "Can I keep this with me during surgery?" she asked. "Of course," Charlotte replied. "And when you wake up, we'll come back, and you can tell us all about how brave you were." The promise of a post-surgery visit gave Lucy something specific to anticipate, transforming the medical procedure from an endpoint into a step toward reunion with her new friends. George contributed to the conversation by sharing a story about his own experience with medical procedures. "I had to get stitches once when I fell off my bicycle," he told Lucy. "I was worried it would hurt, but the doctor was very gentle, and my papa stayed with me the whole time." The parallel between a future king's childhood fears and Lucy's current anxiety helped normalize her emotions and demonstrate that courage didn't mean the absence of fear. They spent another hour with Lucy and her family, reading stories, playing quiet games, and helping her prepare emotionally for the next day's procedure. When they left, Lucy was noticeably calmer and more optimistic about her surgery. Their next visit was to Marcus, the 12-year-old footballer who had been working on regaining mobility in his legs. The change in his condition since their last visit was remarkable. He was no longer confined to a wheelchair and was eager to demonstrate the progress he had made. "Watch this," Marcus said proudly, standing up from his bed and taking several careful but steady steps across his room. "The physical therapist says I might be able to go home next week." George's eyes widened with excitement. "That's amazing. Does this mean you'll be able to play football again soon?" "Not right away," Marcus replied honestly. "But the doctors think I'll eventually be able to return to my team. I've been doing strengthening exercises every day, and I've been studying game strategies while I recover." The conversation revealed how Marcus had used his time in the hospital not just to heal physically, but to deepen his understanding of football tactics and team leadership. His enforced break from playing had given him new perspectives on the sport he loved. Ahmed joined their conversation, sharing his own experience of recovering strength and stamina during his treatment. "The hardest part for me was being patient with the healing process," he said. "I wanted to jump back into cooking immediately, but my body needed time to get strong again." Marcus nodded understanding. "That's exactly how I feel about football. My mind is ready to play, but my legs need more time to catch up." The exchange between Ahmed and Marcus demonstrated the value of peer support in recovery processes. Ahmed's successful transition from patient to volunteer provided tangible hope for Marcus's own future. They moved on to visit David, who had become something of a celebrity in the hospital for his chess teaching abilities. He had been working with younger patients and several of the teenage volunteers to establish a formal chess club that met twice weekly. "We have 8 regular members now," David announced proudly. "And 3 of the kids I taught have won games against some of the older volunteers." George was impressed by the program David had created. "How did you get everyone interested in chess?" "I started by showing them that chess is like solving puzzles," David explained. "Once they understood that each game presents new problems to figure out, they got really excited about learning different strategies." Catherine observed the conversation with interest, recognizing David's natural leadership abilities and his intuitive understanding of how to engage younger children in learning new skills. "We're planning a tournament for next month," David continued. "Dr. Chun said we could invite family members to come watch, and we're going to have prizes for different categories like most creative strategy and best sportsmanship." The chess club represented exactly the kind of patient-led initiative that the hospital hoped to encourage. David had transformed his own interest in the game into a community-building activity that provided ongoing engagement for multiple patients. William was particularly pleased to see how David's initiative had grown organically from their earlier conversations about chess. The boy had taken a personal interest and developed it into something that benefited the entire hospital community. In the teenage ward, they found Chloe preparing for a photography exhibition that would display her hospital artwork in the main lobby. Her collection had grown significantly since their last visit, and several of her images captured powerful emotions and interactions between patients, families, and medical staff. "These photographs tell incredible stories," Catherine said, examining Chloe's latest work. "You have a real talent for capturing moments of connection and hope." Chloe beamed with pride. "Being here has taught me that beautiful moments can happen anywhere, even in hospitals. I want people to see that kids dealing with serious illnesses are still kids with dreams and personalities and humor." Her photographic series included portraits of children engaged in various activities, candid shots of family interactions, and artistic images that used light and shadow to convey emotion. Each photograph was accompanied by a brief statement from the subject about their experience or perspective. "Would you mind if I took some pictures during today's visit?" Chloe asked. "I'd love to document how volunteer visits contribute to the hospital community." William agreed to the request, recognizing that Chloe's documentation could help other hospitals understand the value of similar programs. Her photographs would provide authentic evidence of how genuine relationships between volunteers and patients enhance the healing environment. Jake, the teenage musician, had been working on organizing informal concerts for other patients. His original songs had become popular throughout the hospital, and he had begun collaborating with other musically inclined patients and visitors. "We performed last week for the younger kids," Jake explained excitedly. "Ahmed sang backup vocals on one of my songs about hope and recovery. It was amazing to see how music brought everyone together." The collaboration between current and former patients exemplified the kind of community connections that the hospital hoped to foster. Jake's music provided emotional expression and comfort, while Ahmed's participation demonstrated the ongoing bonds between the hospital and its alumni. Catherine asked Jake about his plans for sharing his music beyond the hospital walls. "Have you thought about recording your songs so other young patients could hear them?" "Actually, yes," Jake replied enthusiastically. My music teacher at school has offered to help me make professional recordings. We want to create a collection specifically for hospitals and medical facilities. The conversation revealed Jake's sophisticated understanding of how his personal healing journey could be transformed into a resource for others facing similar challenges. His artistic growth during treatment had given him both the skills and the motivation to contribute to a larger community of young patients. As the afternoon progressed, the royal family participated in a special activity that Dr. Chun had organized specifically for their visit. The hospital had arranged for several discharged patients, including Ahmed, to return and share their recovery stories with current patients who were just beginning their treatment journeys. The sharing session took place in the main playroom, with current patients, family members, hospital staff, and the royal visitors forming a large circle. The format was informal and conversational, allowing stories to emerge naturally rather than through formal presentations. Ahmed began by describing his initial fears when he was first hospitalized and how connecting with other patients and volunteers had helped him maintain hope during difficult moments. His story resonated particularly with newer patients who were still adjusting to hospital life. The hardest part wasn't the medical procedures, Ahmed explained. It was feeling like my normal life had been put on hold. But being here taught me that life doesn't stop during treatment. It just takes on different forms. His perspective helped current patients understand that hospitalization could be a time of growth and learning rather than simply an interruption of their regular activities. Ahmed's example demonstrated how challenges could be transformed into opportunities for personal development. A teenage girl named Maria, who had completed treatment 6 months earlier, shared her experience of gradually returning to school and normal activities. Her story provided practical guidance for patients wondering about life after discharge. The transition back to regular life was actually harder than I expected, Maria said honestly. I'd gotten used to having nurses and doctors constantly checking on me. Learning to trust my body again took time. Her candid discussion about post-treatment adjustment provided valuable preparation for patients approaching the end of their hospital stays. Maria's experience helped normalize the complex emotions associated with recovery and returning to regular activities. The sharing session also included contributions from George and Charlotte, who described what they had learned from their hospital visits and how meeting the patients had changed their perspectives on courage and resilience. Before coming here, I thought being brave meant not being scared, Charlotte said thoughtfully. But Lucy taught me that being brave means doing important things even when you are scared. George added his own observation. Everyone here has taught me that people can be strong in different ways. Sometimes strength means fighting illness. Sometimes it means helping other people. And sometimes it means learning new things when old things become difficult. The children's reflections demonstrated how genuinely they had engaged with their hospital experiences and how much they had learned from the patients they had met. Dr. Chun concluded the session by announcing several new initiatives that had been inspired by the ongoing volunteer program. The hospital planned to establish formal mentorship connections between former patients and current ones, expand the arts and music programs, and create opportunities for patients to contribute to hospital policy discussions. Your involvement has helped us recognize that patients have valuable insights about improving the hospital experience, she said to the assembled group. We're committed to creating more opportunities for patient voices to shape the care we provide. As their third extended visit concluded, William reflected on how their relationship with St. Mary's Hospital had evolved from charitable appearances to genuine community partnership. The connections his children had formed with individual patients had grown into broader understanding about service, empathy, and the power of human relationships to promote healing. The drive home was filled with thoughtful conversation about the day's experiences and planning for future visits. Both George and Charlotte had developed strong personal commitments to maintaining their relationships with specific patients and contributing to ongoing hospital programs. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as William prepared for what would become a pivotal conversation about expanding their hospital involvement beyond St. Mary's. 3 weeks had passed since their last visit, and the impact of their ongoing relationship with the children's ward had generated interest from medical facilities across London and beyond. Catherine joined William in his study, carrying a folder filled with letters and requests from various hospitals, children's charities, and medical organizations. The correspondence reflected the growing recognition of how genuine royal engagement could positively influence pediatric care environments. Dr. Robertson from Great Ormond Street Hospital called yesterday, Catherine informed him, settling into the chair across from his desk. They've heard about our work at St. Mary's and would like to discuss establishing a similar program for their cardiac surgery patients. William reviewed the accumulated requests with mixed feelings. While he was gratified by the positive response to their efforts, he remained committed to ensuring that any expansion maintained the authentic relationships and genuine service that had made their St. Mary's visits so meaningful. And here's something interesting, Catherine continued, pulling out a letter written on official government letterhead. The Department of Health has asked if we'd be willing to participate in a national initiative promoting pediatric patient well-being through volunteer engagement. The government interest represented both an opportunity and a potential challenge. William recognized that official endorsement could help expand similar programs to hospitals nationwide, but he was concerned about maintaining the personal, informal approach that had proven so effective with individual patients. Their conversation was interrupted by George and Charlotte, who had become increasingly invested in their hospital relationships and were eager to discuss plans for their upcoming visit to St. Mary's. "Papa," Charlotte announced, carrying a carefully wrapped package, "I finished the storybook I was writing for Lucy. It's about a brave unicorn who helps other magical creatures feel better when they're sick." George followed close behind, carrying a chess set and several books about strategy. "David asked me to bring some new chess problems for the club to work on, and Marcus wanted me to research adaptive sports programs for people recovering from leg injuries." The children's continued enthusiasm and their increasing sophistication in addressing their young friends' specific interests impressed both parents. What had begun as a simple charitable visit had evolved into ongoing research projects and creative endeavors designed to support particular patients. "We also got letters," George added, pulling folded papers from his pocket. "Jake sent me lyrics to a new song he wrote, and Chloe mailed some photographs she took during our last visit." The correspondence between the royal children and their hospital friends demonstrated the authentic relationships that had developed beyond the formal visit structure. These connections had become genuine friendships that continued to grow between official engagements. William made a decision that would shape their future involvement. "Before we consider expanding to other hospitals, I want us to spend more time at St. Mary's understanding what truly makes our visits valuable. Then, we can help other facilities develop programs that work for their specific patient populations." The approach reflected William's commitment to thorough understanding before broad implementation. Rather than simply replicating their activities elsewhere, he wanted to identify the essential elements that could be adapted to different medical environments and patient needs. 2 days later, the royal family returned to St. Mary's with Dr. Amanda Foster, the child psychologist who had been observing and documenting the impact of their visits on patient well-being and recovery outcomes. Today's visit would include more structured observation and feedback collection to help inform potential program expansion. They arrived to find significant changes in the patient population since their last visit. Lucy had successfully completed her surgery and was recovering ahead of schedule. Marcus had been discharged and was continuing his rehabilitation at home, and several new patients had joined the hospital community. Dr. Chun greeted them with updates that demonstrated the measurable impact their program was having on hospital culture and patient outcomes. "We've seen improvements in several key areas," she explained as they walked toward the elevators. "Patient engagement with treatment plans has increased, family stress levels have decreased, and We've had significantly fewer behavioral issues during medical procedures. The quantifiable results validated what William had observed anecdotally during their visits. The children's relationships with volunteers and their anticipation of regular activities had created positive changes that extended far beyond entertainment value. Their first stop was to visit Lucy, who was now mobile and eager to show off her recovery progress. Her room was filled with get-well cards from classmates and artwork she had created during her recuperation. "Charlotte," Lucy exclaimed, carefully getting out of bed to greet her royal friend. "Look how much better I can walk now." Charlotte was amazed by Lucy's improvement and immediately wanted to hear all about her surgery experience and recovery process. The conversation provided valuable insights into how young patients process and cope with major medical procedures. "The surgery wasn't as scary as I thought it would be," Lucy explained, sitting cross-legged on her bed. "I kept thinking about the photo album you made me, and I knew you would come back to visit like you promised." Her comments highlighted the psychological value of having something concrete to anticipate during medical treatment. The promised visit had provided motivation and hope during a challenging time. "And guess what?" Lucy continued excitedly. "I'm going to be discharged next week. But Dr. Chun said I could come back sometimes to visit other kids and maybe help with the storytelling program." The transition from patient to volunteer represented the kind of positive cycle that the hospital hoped to encourage. Lucy's successful treatment and positive experience had inspired her to want to help other children facing similar challenges. George and Charlotte spent considerable time with Lucy, reading the new storybook Charlotte had created and discussing Lucy's plans for returning to school and resuming normal activities. The conversation revealed how hospitalization had changed Lucy's perspective on helping others and dealing with difficulties. They next visited the chess club, which had grown significantly under David's leadership. The program now included 12 regular participants ranging in age from 8 to 16, and they had established connections with chess clubs at other hospitals for friendly competitions. "We played against kids at the Royal London Hospital last week using video calls," David explained proudly. "It was amazing to meet other patients who love chess as much as we do." The inter-hospital chess program represented exactly the kind of innovation that could be replicated across different medical facilities. David's initiative had created opportunities for patients to connect with peers beyond their immediate hospital environment. George joined a practice session and was impressed by the skill level that several of the younger players had achieved. "You become really good teachers," he told David and the older club members. "These beginners are learning much faster than I did when I first started." The observation highlighted how peer teaching often proved more effective than adult instruction for engaging young learners. The hospital patients had developed their own methods for explaining chess concepts in ways that resonated with other children. Catherine spent time with the teenage patients who were working on an ambitious project to create a patient handbook for newly admitted children and their families. The guide would include practical information about hospital procedures along with emotional support strategies developed by patients themselves. Chloe was contributing photography to the handbook, capturing images that showed the positive aspects of hospital life alongside more serious treatment moments. "We want new patients to see that being here doesn't mean giving up on normal kid activities," she explained. Jake had written several short songs specifically for the handbook, including pieces designed to help younger children cope with common medical procedures like blood draws and x-rays. His music provided accessible emotional support for children who might not respond to traditional counseling approaches. The handbook will include stories from kids who have been through different treatments, explained Maria, the former patient who had returned as a volunteer. "We want families to know what to expect and how other people have successfully handled similar situations." The Patient Handbook Project demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the hospital experience and genuine empathy for newly diagnosed children and their families. The teenage contributors had transformed their own challenging experiences into resources for others. Dr. Foster observed these interactions carefully, noting how the royal family's presence facilitated deeper conversations and encouraged patients to articulate their experiences more thoughtfully. Their visits provided structure for reflection and sharing that benefited both current patients and the hospital community as a whole. During lunch in the hospital cafeteria, Dr. Foster shared her preliminary findings about the program's impact. "What we're seeing goes beyond simple mood improvement," she explained. "Patients are developing stronger coping mechanisms, better communication skills, and more positive attitudes toward their treatment plans. The psychological benefits extended to family members as well. Parents reported feeling less isolated and more hopeful when their children were engaged in meaningful activities and relationships with volunteers and peers. The most significant factor seems to be the consistency and authenticity of the relationships," Dr. Foster continued. "Patients know that their volunteer friends will return regularly and that their connections are based on genuine interest rather than obligation." William recognized that this consistency requirement would be crucial for any program expansion. Hospitals considering similar initiatives would need to ensure long-term commitment from volunteers rather than sporadic visits that might raise expectations without providing sustained support. The afternoon included a special session where discharged patients returned to mentor newly admitted children. Ahmed had organized the program with hospital staff, creating structured opportunities for successful treatment graduates to share their experiences and provide encouragement. "When I first came here, I was scared about everything," Ahmed told a group of younger patients. "But the doctors, nurses, and volunteers helped me understand that being in the hospital could actually be a time for learning new things and making new friends." His presentation included practical advice about navigating hospital routines, managing anxiety about procedures, and finding ways to stay connected with friends and interests from outside the hospital. Ahmed's perspective helped normalize the hospital experience for children who were still adjusting to their new environment. George and Charlotte participated by sharing what they had learned from their hospital friendships. "Meeting all of you has taught us that people can be strong and happy even when they're dealing with difficult things," Charlotte told the group. George added, "And we've learned that helping other people actually makes us feel good too. Coming here has become one of our favorite activities." Their comments reinforced for the listening patients that their hospital experience was valuable not only for their own growth, but also as a way of contributing positively to other people's lives. The mentorship session concluded with current patients asking questions about recovery, discharge procedures, and returning to normal activities. The frank discussions helped demystify the treatment process and provided realistic but hopeful perspectives on what patients could expect. Later in the afternoon, William participated in a meeting with Dr. Chun, Dr. Foster, and senior hospital administrators to discuss formalizing aspects of the volunteer program that could be shared with other medical facilities. "We've identified several key elements that seem essential for success," Dr. Chun explained, referring to notes she had compiled over their months of collaboration. "Consistent scheduling, genuine relationship building, patient-led activities, and integration with existing hospital programs." Dr. Foster added her psychological perspective. "The volunteers need training about appropriate boundaries, age-appropriate communication, and recognizing signs of patient distress. But the training should enhance rather than constrain their natural interactions." William emphasized the importance of maintaining authenticity in any expanded programs. "The moment this becomes formulaic or artificial, we'll lose what makes it special. Each hospital will need to develop approaches that work for their specific patient populations and volunteer resources." The discussion resulted in plans for creating a framework guide that other hospitals could adapt rather than a rigid program structure that might not translate effectively to different environments. As their visit concluded, William gathered his family for reflection on how their hospital involvement had evolved and what they had learned about effective service and community engagement. "When we started coming here, I thought we were mainly providing entertainment for sick children," Charlotte said thoughtfully. "But Now I understand that we're all helping each other learn and grow. George reflected on his chess teaching experiences. I've learned that sharing something you're good at with other people makes everyone better at it. Teaching David chess strategies helped me understand the game better too. Their insights demonstrated how genuine service creates mutual benefit rather than one-way charitable giving. The royal children had developed as much as they had contributed through their hospital relationships. William was particularly pleased to see how naturally his children had developed understanding about service, empathy, and community responsibility through their hands-on experiences rather than through lectures or formal instruction. The drive back to Kensington Palace included animated discussion about future plans for expanding their hospital involvement while maintaining the personal relationships that had made their St. Mary's program so successful. Both children were excited about the possibility of helping other hospitals develop similar programs while continuing their ongoing friendships with their St. Mary's friends. Catherine observed how the hospital visits had become integral to their family's understanding of their role and responsibilities. These relationships have taught us all about the difference between charity and service, she noted. Charity gives to people who need help. Service builds relationships with people who have valuable contributions to make. 6 months after their first visit to St. Mary's Children's Hospital, the royal family found themselves preparing for what would become a celebration of relationships built, lives touched, and a program that had grown far beyond anyone's initial expectations. The occasion was the hospital's first annual community celebration, an event designed to bring together current patients, discharged patients, families, hospital staff, and volunteers. William stood in his study at Kensington Palace, reviewing letters and updates from the various hospitals that had implemented similar volunteer programs based on the St. Mary's model. The folder had grown thick with correspondence from medical facilities across the United Kingdom and several international locations that had adapted their approach to local needs and cultures. The program in Edinburgh has been running for 3 months now, Catherine reported, joining him with her own stack of correspondence. They focus specifically on patients recovering from cardiac surgery, and the results have been remarkable. Patient anxiety levels before procedures have decreased by 40%. The success stories continue to accumulate from hospitals that had carefully studied the St. Mary's approach and implemented their own versions of sustained volunteer engagement. Each facility had adapted the core principles to their specific patient populations and medical specialties while maintaining the emphasis on authentic relationships and consistency. George and Charlotte had become unofficial consultants in the program expansion, corresponding with young patients at other hospitals and sharing strategies for chess clubs, storytelling sessions, and art projects. Their involvement had evolved from simple participation to active leadership in developing resources for pediatric volunteer programs. "Look what Jake sent us," Charlotte announced, carrying a small package that had arrived in the Morning Post. Inside was a CD containing professionally recorded versions of songs he had written during his hospital stay, along with a letter explaining how his music was now being used in hospitals across London. George carried his own correspondence from David, who had been discharged from St. Mary's 3 months earlier, but continued volunteering with the chess club twice weekly. David says the chess program now has connections with 12 different hospitals, and they're planning a big tournament in the spring. The ongoing communication between the royal children and their hospital friends demonstrated how genuine relationships had continued to flourish beyond the formal hospital setting. These connections had become lasting friendships that enriched everyone involved. William reflected on how dramatically their understanding of royal service had evolved through their hospital involvement. What had begun as traditional charitable visits had transformed into a model for sustained community engagement that was influencing pediatric care practices nationwide. The morning of the community celebration found the royal family traveling to St. Mary's Hospital with special anticipation. Today would reunite them with many of the children they had met throughout their months of visits, including several who had completed treatment and returned to normal activities. The hospital had transformed its main lobby and adjacent conference rooms into festival spaces decorated with artwork created by current and former patients. Chloe's photography exhibition lined the corridors, displaying powerful images that captured moments of hope, friendship, and resilience from throughout the year. Dr. Chin greeted them at the entrance with barely contained excitement. "We have over 200 people attending today," she announced. "Current patients, discharged patients, and their families, hospital staff, volunteers, and representatives from 8 other hospitals that have implemented similar programs." The scope of the celebration reflected how significantly the volunteer program had grown and how many lives it had touched. What had started with a handful of individual relationships had expanded into a community movement that was changing pediatric care approaches across multiple institutions. Their first reunion was with Lucy, who arrived with her parents looking healthy, energetic, and excited to see her royal friends. She had grown noticeably during her months of recovery and was eager to share her experiences returning to school and normal activities. "Charlotte," Lucy called out, running across the lobby to embrace her friend. "I brought the new chapters of a story I've been writing. It's about a princess who becomes friends with children in a magical healing castle." The story Lucy had created clearly drew inspiration from her hospital experience, transforming her medical journey into an adventure tale that could help other children process similar situations. Her creative work demonstrated how positive hospital experiences could influence children's perspectives on challenges and recovery. George was immediately approached by Marcus, who arrived walking confidently and wearing his football team uniform. His recovery had progressed so well that he had not only returned to playing, but had been selected as team captain for the upcoming season. "Your Royal Highness," Marcus said with a grin, "I have something to show you." He pulled out a photograph of his team, holding a trophy from a recent tournament. "We dedicated our championship win to all our friends at St. Mary's Hospital." The gesture demonstrated how Marcus had integrated his hospital experience into his broader life story, using his athletic success as a platform for supporting other young patients. His recovery had become a source of inspiration and hope for children currently facing similar medical challenges. The celebration included multiple activity stations where current and former patients could demonstrate programs they had developed or contributed to during their hospital stays. The chess club had set up several boards for ongoing games and instruction, while the art therapy program displayed collaborative murals and individual pieces created by patients of all ages. Ahmed had organized a cooking demonstration where he shared simple, healthy recipes that could be prepared in hospital settings or by families dealing with dietary restrictions related to medical treatments. His presentation drew large crowds and generated significant interest from hospital nutritionists and family members. "Cooking became my way of contributing to my own healing," Ahmed explained to his audience. "When I could help plan meals or prepare simple dishes, I felt like myself again instead of just a patient." His perspective resonated particularly with parents who were struggling to maintain normal family routines while dealing with their children's medical needs. Ahmed's practical suggestions provided concrete ways for families to maintain connection and normalcy during hospital stays. Jake performed several of his original songs, including new pieces he had written specifically for the celebration. His music had evolved significantly since his hospital stay, incorporating themes of community, resilience, and the power of human connection to promote healing. "Music helped me process my emotions during treatment," Jake told the audience before his final song. "But sharing music with other people taught me that healing happens in relationships, not just in individual recovery." His performance concluded with a collaborative piece that included other musically inclined patients and volunteers, demonstrating how artistic expression could bring people together across different backgrounds and experiences. Dr. Foster presented research findings that documented the measurable impact of sustained volunteer engagement on patient outcomes. Her data showed improvements in treatment compliance, reduced anxiety levels, shorter average hospital stays, and increased patient satisfaction scores. But the most significant finding, she explained, is the long-term impact on how these children understand their own resilience and their ability to contribute positively to other people's lives. The psychological benefits extended far beyond the immediate hospital experience, influencing how young patients approach challenges and relationships throughout their development. William participated in a panel discussion with hospital administrators from facilities that had implemented similar programs. The conversation focused on practical aspects of program development, volunteer training, and measuring success across different medical environments. The key lesson we've learned, William shared with the panel audience, is that authentic relationship building takes time and consistency. Programs that focus on one-time visits or publicity opportunities don't create the same benefits as sustained engagement with genuine personal investment. His comments emphasize the importance of long-term commitment rather than sporadic charitable appearances. The most successful program adaptations had maintained focus on building lasting relationships between volunteers and patients. Representatives from hospitals in Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow described their own program variations, including adaptations for different patient populations, cultural considerations, and integration with existing therapeutic services. Our cardiac surgery program has incorporated family art therapy sessions led by former patients, explained Dr. Williams from Manchester Children's Hospital. The combination of peer support and creative expression has dramatically improved family coping strategies during long-term treatment. The program variations demonstrated how the core principles of authentic relationship building and sustained engagement could be adapted to different medical specialties while maintaining their effectiveness. Catherine participated in a workshop focused on family support services, sharing insights about how volunteer programs could address the needs of parents and siblings dealing with pediatric medical situations. We learned that healing happens in families and communities, not just in individual patients, Catherine explained. Programs that include entire family systems create stronger support networks and better long-term outcomes. Her observations reflected how the royal family's own understanding of service and community engagement had evolved through their hospital experiences. The celebration's highlight was a ceremony recognizing outstanding contributions by patients, volunteers, and staff members. Awards were presented for leadership, creativity, peer support, and community building, with recipients representing the collaborative spirit that had made the program successful. David received recognition for his chess club leadership and his work connecting patients across multiple hospitals. His acceptance speech was brief but moving, emphasizing how teaching other children had helped him develop confidence and leadership skills that would benefit him throughout his life. Chloe was honored for her photography work and her documentation of patient experiences that had helped other hospitals understand the impact of volunteer programs. Her artistic vision had provided powerful evidence of how positive hospital environments could promote healing and personal growth. Ahmed received an award for his mentorship work with newly diagnosed patients and his development of nutrition education programs that were now being used in pediatric hospitals across London. Lucy was recognized for her storytelling contributions and her transition from patient to volunteer, demonstrating how positive hospital experiences could inspire lifelong commitment to helping others. George and Charlotte received special recognition for their role in developing and promoting pediatric volunteer programs, but William made sure the focus remained on the patients and staff who had made the program successful. "Our children have learned far more than they have given," William said during his remarks. "The courage, creativity, and generosity of spirit they have encountered here has taught them invaluable lessons about service, empathy, and the power of human relationships to transform difficult situations into opportunities for growth." As the celebration concluded, families, patients, and staff members exchanged contact information and made plans for ongoing connections. The event had reinforced that the program's success depended on sustained relationships rather than occasional charitable activities. Dr. Chun approached the royal family as they prepared to leave, carrying a leather-bound book filled with letters, artwork, and photographs contributed by current and former patients. "This is for your family," she said, presenting the book to William. "Every contributor wanted you to know how much your genuine friendship and sustained commitment has meant to them and to this hospital community." The gift represented months of collaborative effort by patients who wanted to express their appreciation for relationships that had enriched their lives during challenging times. Charlotte and George spent considerable time saying goodbye to their many friends, making plans for continued correspondence and future visits. Their relationships had become integral to their understanding of their roles and responsibilities as members of the royal family. As they drove back to Kensington Palace, William reflected on how profoundly their hospital involvement had influenced their family's approach to public service. They had learned that authentic relationships and sustained commitment created far greater impact than ceremonial appearances or one-time charitable contributions. "Papa," Charlotte said thoughtfully as London passed by outside their windows, "I understand now why Grandmama Diana loved visiting hospitals so much. It's not about helping sick people. It's about becoming friends with really interesting people who happen to be dealing with medical stuff." Her insight captured the essential transformation in their understanding of service. They had moved beyond seeing themselves as charitable benefactors to recognizing their role as community members who both contributed to and learned from relationships with people from all backgrounds and circumstances. George added his own reflection on the day's experiences. "The celebration showed me that when people work together and really care about each other, amazing things can happen. All those hospitals starting programs, kids helping other kids, families supporting each other, it all started because we decided to keep visiting instead of just coming once." William was pleased to see how naturally his children had developed understanding about the power of sustained commitment and authentic relationship building. Their hospital experiences had provided practical education about leadership, empathy, and community engagement that would serve them throughout their lives. The community celebration had demonstrated that their initial hospital visit had grown into something far larger and more meaningful than anyone had anticipated. The relationships they had built with individual patients had inspired program development that was now influencing pediatric care practices across multiple countries. Most importantly, the experience had taught the royal family that genuine service required ongoing personal investment in relationships with people whose lives intersected with theirs. Their hospital friends had become permanent parts of their understanding of community, responsibility, and the privilege of being able to contribute positively to other people's lives. As they arrived at Kensington Palace, both George and Charlotte were all ready.